Let's talk money.
Hello and welcome to 2025's first edition of Let's Talk Money. Let me start by wishing all of you viewers a very, very happy new year. We have been your partners in the wealth creation journey in the year 2024, and the year gone by was a fairly rewarding one. The equity market had a good ride, but investors' patience was also tested by the end of 2024. So what are the lessons that we have learned, and how do we approach our mutual fund portfolios in this brand new year? Well, joining me are two stalwarts of the MF industry with their most dazzling picks for 2025. So they will tell us what to keep in mind and which funds to pick. Let me introduce Feroze Azeez of Anand Rathi Private Wealth and Kaustubh Belapurkar of Morningstar India Research. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining in. And let me start by wishing both of you a very, very happy new year.
Happy New Year, Surabhi, and glad to be here.
Happy New Year, Surabhi, and to every viewer who's watching the show.
You know, Feroze and Kaustubh, I really want to start with gratitude, as both of you have really helped CNBC-TV18's viewers and investors to make informed choices throughout the last many years, including, of course, in 2024. So I want to start with taking stock of what we really learned in the year gone by. I want your thoughts on some of the major trends that we saw, whether it was the NFO rush or thematic funds, and, you know, how we should reflect on some of these trends because there was so much going on. Last year, by the way, equity funds were pulling in tons and tons of money. Thematic funds, sectoral funds, they were the ones that were really doing very, very well. So let's begin with what we learned from 2024. Feroze, what did you make of the trends that you saw?
Yes, I think there were some really good trends which can be picked up. The one thing which definitely stands out is the net flow in thematic schemes. Was exceptionally large. It was almost about 1,40,000 crores of net flow in thematic and sectoral funds, of which 55,000 was NFOs. Is it very healthy? We did a study. If someone were to buy the top 3 asset management companies, all NFOs launched for the last 5 years, would they beat Nifty? The good part is they have beaten Nifty. All the NFOs of the top 3 AMCs. Now let's assume SBI is the top AMC in terms of assets under management. It has launched some tens, 2, 25, 27. If you bought, let's assume 1 lakh rupee in each of them, SBI ने launch कर दिया, मैं खरीद रहा हूँ. If this was the decision made, would that beat Nifty or not at a transaction level? The answer is yes, by about 4% per annum. So when NFOs have been used to expand the industry, it used to worry me. After seeing this data, I'm not so anxious.
Good.
So to answer your pointed question, this is the theme. Thematic and sectoral funds have got a lot of money in it. Second is NFOs have been the theme, but it's not been scary because mathematically it has expanded the industry, got so many new investors, and they've beaten Nifty. I think that's one very important hygiene check for having invested through a mutual fund. That's one trend. The second trend is that the SIP numbers are a reasonable barometer of India doing 2 things. Now, if I see that in conjunction with derivative trading. So because we meet a lot of people on ground, I've done a small little study. When I was in 5 such events, I asked people, how many of you invest in SIP? And I also asked them the question, do you do derivatives? And we found 73% intersection.
Oh.
Okay, this is something which calmed my nerves again because it's not 2 different people. They are trying to use the derivative space to quench the thirst of the adrenal. At the same time, they're not disrespecting discipline. If it was 2 mutually exclusive sets, the regulator had a bigger problem.
That's really a fantastic insight, actually, Feroze. I mean, that those who are dabbling in F&O and doing all of that funky trading, they're also keeping their SIPs intact. The SIPs are running, so that's heartening to note. Perhaps it's a sign of the majority of the Indian investor psyche. Kaustubh, let me come to you, your views.
Yeah, so I think, you know, Feroze alluded to some of the facts, you know, that in terms of flows, right? I mean, I think it's been a phenomenal year to be an investor, to be an asset manager, you know, because, I mean, we've had a strong year, albeit, you know, volatility has been there, but I think the good part is that, you know, we kind of ended the year strongly. And, you know, I think the most important thing when you look at the flows, right? So when obviously Feroze spoke about the thematics, and maybe we have a slightly different view in terms of thematics because the color of the money is important in terms of, and that's a great study that you know, the team's done, and perhaps maybe it's an idea for a fund of all NFOs that come out. But you know, like some of the studies we've done in the past, what we found is thematics, given that there are so lumpy in their returns. The timing needs to be impeccable, right? And there are times when investors will pick certain funds based on past returns, and it may not really play out. So I think that's one trend I'd want to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Obviously, the industries look to fill gaps. All the diversified equity buckets are all now kind of already there for most asset managers. So there's the thematics that has come into play. But I think just the pace of thematics that have come about and some of the launches, depending on the more recent performance of those strategies, and they've collected big money, right? We've seen 10, 12,000 in funds that have just recently been launched coming into some of these thematic funds. I think that's something I'd want to keep an eye on. Does every investor understand what they're getting into? I'm sure there are a lot of nuanced investors who know what they're getting into. They want that exposure they're getting into. But, is it for all? That's, I think, a question that I'd want everyone to think about.
The data that we are just putting up on the screen right now, that is really telling a story. And the figure that Feroze also quoted, in 2024, thematic and sectoral funds pooled in the largest chunk of money when you're talking about equity mutual funds. It wasn't the large cap category. It wasn't really small or mid cap funds. It was these thematic funds that, through, of course, a lot of new fund offerings, they kept on pulling in the money. In fact, over 1,40,000 crores came in just through thematics alone. And then, of course, there was a multi-cap category, the flexi cap. All the numbers are on your screen. All of those categories also fared really well. So just to complete the point on thematics, and I completely take your caution on board on this, because I remember, Kaustubh, we did a show on this in the middle of the year as well. And you had pointed out that, thematics need to be handled with care. Take that point. But Feroze, let me come to you in terms of all the major NFOs that we saw this year on the thematic side, on the sectoral side, or even other NFOs. There were so many NFOs. Which are the ones that pass muster with you and the ones that perhaps you think are fit to invest in even now?
See, I think top AMCs launch certain themes at the right time. Okay, I definitely don't subscribe to a thematic or a sectoral fund. In fact, in my model portfolio for the last 11 years, I've not seen one. Only one we've just included, which is SBI infrastructure. Okay, but coming back to NFOs, I think the energy sector NFOs were timed beautifully, especially the SBI's energy sector fund. HDFC's infrastructure fund was timed not in this calendar year, the year which went by, but that was timed very well. The manufacturing sector NFO of HDFC was also timed very well. So these large AMCs, when they've picked up themes, they've been very, very responsible is what I would say.
Okay.
The second thing is, why are suddenly so many NFOs, 32 NFOs and 55,000 crores? It is a resultant outcome of something which is a 2018 phenomena. When SEBI said that now you can't have any number of funds in the same category, so every large asset management company has its bouquet full with the flowers which are there. Now, thematic and sector creates an unlimited canvas. After 10 years also, you can keep launching thematics because the theme could be companies starting with the alphabet A. Could be a theme. So thematic gives you a very, very open canvas. And since everybody has finished their NFOs, that's why this is happening. So I personally think that I think I have to give some degree of credit to the large AMCs when they have launched sector or thematic schemes. They have timed them impeccably.
Yeah, absolutely. Feroze, do you still feel that this is a market where it is actually active funds that make more sense? And if at all one wants to dabble with passive funds, what are the questions that we should ask as investors?
It's a myth that passive is simple. Okay, it's a myth, and I'll substantiate that with some data. One is 84% of the total passive universe of AUM is between Nifty and Sensex. So the tail might be long in terms of the number, but the money is concentrated, like Kaustubh Saab said. It's in Nifty and Sensex. Point one. Point two, you have to understand that how are indices created in India? Apart from these factor investing, they are created on a growth style only. Larger the performance, higher the weight, higher the inflow, higher the performance. So it is like when you have a child, chabi ki gudiya hoti hai na? I'm giving a very, very correlatable analogy, but a child's analogy. It's like winding a toy. What has happened in the US? Why are these businesses obscenely valued? Because they are top heavy. They're top heavy. If you're making a passive investing, please remember, you are saying valuation is irrelevant. Because you are not in a passive index, you're going to be only chasing momentum, at least the way Indian indices, conventional ones, are created. That's one problem. See, Nifty 50, the top 5 stocks have about 38, 39%.
Sure.
If they underperform,
Then
their
your
weight
fund
will
will
come down.
underperform.
The
Yeah.
weights will come down in the index. There are 2 review periods of NSE, which is 31st Jan and 31st July. People don't even know that, when there is a rejig.
Yeah.
NSE 500. Now, the second problem is NSE 500, the smallest stock, free float,
Sure.
is not even 3,000 crores. So people might say it's great to invest in NSE 500, but that's the most academic index.
Yeah.
India has 60 lakh crores of mutual fund AUM, 41 lakh crore of equity AUM. Hypothetically, if India decided tomorrow morning, let's move all passive, hypothetically, of course, you won't believe you don't have stock, because the stock is only 2,400 crores.
Yeah.
The amount which it needs to buy, this is a study which completely told us that if you go passive as a country, your supply isn't there to absorb that kind of. And we did a study of which stocks are benefiting from this trend and which stocks actually have a problem with this trend. And that was a very, very interesting analysis.
Okay, got it, gentlemen. Well, the short point is that Feroze is still not convinced of allocating a very large sum of money to passives. The debate continues. But, gentlemen, we've done a lot of theory now. So we have to take a break. We've done the taking stock of the year gone by. Now it is time for action, because after the break, top fund picks for 2025. Which ones should you back? Both Feroze and Kaustubh will give us their top mutual fund ideas in just a bit.
Let's talk money